The morning rush of cars and bustling chatter usually drowns out any whimper from a stray, but this time, the heartbreaking silence surrounding a tiny, trembling puppy made 14-year-old Lisa stop in her tracks. It wasn't that she couldn't hear him cry. She could. The real shock was that he couldn't hear her at all. Lisa had been cutting through a back alley in her neighborhood when she spotted the pup huddled behind an overflowing trash bin. Ribs showing through a patchy tan coat, the dog quivered in fear but didn't startle at the clamor of street noise behind him. Intrigued, Lisa inched closer, softly whispering comfort. No response. Confused, she tried calling out louder. Still, nothing. Only when she gently touched his side did the puppy look up, wide-eyed and trembling. That's when it hit her. He was deaf. Word spread quickly. A deaf puppy. Poor thing will never fit in. Neighbors dismissed him as unadoptable, a burden nobody wanted. But Lisa felt an immediate bond. The puppy might not hear her voice, but he visibly relaxed when she offered a calm presence. It was as if he sensed genuine kindness for the first time in his short, lonely life. Right then and there, Lisa decided to bring him home. She named him Chance, one simple word that captured everything she hoped to give him. Though her parents had reservations, worried about the training hurdles and the dog's potential health issues, Lisa refused to back down. She insisted on at least a visit to the vet before making any final decisions. During the exam, the veterinarian confirmed Chance's total deafness, likely congenital. Worse still, he was malnourished, teetering on the brink of survival. Despite it all, the pup wagged his tail whenever Lisa offered a slow, comforting stroke along his flank. In the days that followed, Lisa tried to teach him basic hand signals, but it felt like walking in the dark. Chance cowered whenever anyone new approached, as if expecting rejection or worse. Her friends teased her for taking on a hopeless cause, and even her own parents questioned whether a busy family could handle the extra care required. Yet Lisa saw a spark in Chance's eyes that told her he was worth every bit of effort. Little did she know that the greatest challenges and the most heartbreaking twist were still ahead, poised to test both Chance's spirit and her unwavering devotion to him. From the moment Lisa carried Chance into her family's modest home, the little puppy's presence sparked both hope and uncertainty. Her parents, Margaret and Dennis, stood by the doorway with wary expressions, unsure how to handle a dog who couldn't hear their voices. Even so, Lisa insisted that, given time and patience, Chance would learn to adapt. Determined to prove it, she spent the first evening with him cradled on her lap in the living room, stroking his ears and whispering softly, even though she knew he couldn't hear a single word. The next day, Lisa headed off to school, leaving Chance in a makeshift playpen built from cardboard boxes and spare baby gates in the kitchen. Margaret, who worked part-time, promised to check on him. But hours later, Lisa returned to find a scene of minor chaos. Chance had gnawed through one of the flimsier cardboard sections and was wandering the house. He'd left small puddles of urine on the hallway floor and knocked over a lamp with his frantic wagging. When Lisa called out his name in alarm, he didn't even look up. Instead, he darted away, startled by her sudden appearance in his limited field of vision. Though exasperated, Lisa stayed calm. She knew Chance wasn't being disobedient. He simply couldn't respond to sounds. She coaxed him toward her by crouching down and tapping gently on the floor. Sensing the vibrations, Chance turned his head, relief flickering in his eyes when he recognized her. Lisa scooped him up, pressing her cheek against his. It was a small victory, but still enough to make her smile. Her parents, however, weren't as easily reassured. Dennis sighed at the toppled lamp, muttering something about too much trouble and, "How do you even train a deaf dog?" Lisa swallowed her frustration, but deep down, she began to question whether she'd taken on more than she could handle. Still, every time she looked at Chance, his tail wagging whenever she entered the room, she felt an unshakable resolve to keep going. She decided to research training methods specifically designed for deaf dogs. Late into the night, she scrolled through forums, watched videos, and scribbled notes in a worn spiral notebook. That's when she stumbled upon a tip from a seasoned trainer. Deaf puppies can learn hand signals, but timing and consistency are everything. The post emphasized the need to use gentle touch, lights, or even vibrations as cues. Lisa felt a surge of excitement, Maybe there was a roadmap after all. The following weekend, she convinced her parents to drive her and Chance to a nearby dog training facility. While they didn't specifically cater to deaf dogs, one of the staff members, a patient older woman named Pauline, offered to help. Watching Lisa try to demonstrate sit using a hand gesture and a quick tap on Chance's back, Pauline nodded in approval. "He's smart," she observed, smiling at the pup's curious tilt of the head. "And you're determined. That's half the battle." Under Pauline's guidance, Lisa started teaching Chance a basic come signal. She would crouch down, wave her hand gently toward her chest, and make sure Chance saw it. When he approached, she rewarded him with a special treat and a gentle rub behind the ears. Bit by bit, Chance caught on. He began watching Lisa closely, fascinated by her hands and face. The sessions weren't perfect. He still got distracted by random household smells and sometimes squeaked in fear when people moved behind him. But there was noticeable progress. Meanwhile, Lisa's parents were cautiously optimistic. Margaret noticed how Chance's eyes lit up whenever Lisa entered a room, and even Dennis admitted the puppy was growing on him. "He's got a sweet nature," Dennis mumbled one afternoon, tossing a soft tennis ball across the yard. Chance chased it clumsily, overshooting its path, but came bounding back with tail wagging. The man's tough exterior cracked a little each time the dog tried to nuzzle his leg, yet all was not smooth sailing. The family's neighbor, Mrs. Hayworth, took issue with Chance from the start. She claimed he howled at night, even though he was, in fact, silent, and complained that his presence might attract other strays. One evening, Lisa overheard a heated conversation between her parents and the neighbor, who demanded that the puppy be kept on a leash at all times, even in their own front yard. Lisa clenched her fists. How could she explain that Chance, already anxious due to his deafness, needed space and gentle socialization? Tension simmered. Lisa came home from school one afternoon to find a note pinned to their front door. "Keep that mutt under control, or I'll call animal services." Fear clutched her heart. What if the authorities took Chance away? Lisa's parents assured her they wouldn't let that happen, but their voices shook with concern. The family began to realize that helping a disabled puppy went beyond training techniques. It also meant navigating a world that wasn't always tolerant. Amid these outside pressures, Chance's health issues began to surface. He coughed sporadically, especially after meals, and sometimes struggled to keep food down. At first, Lisa assumed the stress of training and relocation might be taking a toll, but her intuition told her something else was off. She begged her parents for another vet visit. Reluctantly, they agreed. During the examination, the veterinarian furrowed her brow. "His weight gain is slower than expected," she explained, palpating the puppy's abdomen. "We might need blood tests and x-rays to rule out any underlying condition." Lisa's stomach churned. Was it possible that Chance's challenges went deeper than just deafness? By the time they left the clinic, Lisa's head buzzed with worry. She couldn't shake the vet's gentle but concerned tone. The last thing she wanted was to face another medical hurdle, especially after convincing her parents and neighbors to give this puppy a shot. Even so, she clung to the hope that early intervention could save him from a worse fate. Still, questions swirled. What if this was more serious than any of them suspected? Would her parents still support keeping a dog with special needs and potential health complications? Back home, she sat on the kitchen floor beside Chance, offering him a handful of kibble. He sniffed at it cautiously, then nudged her hand, looking for reassurance. Lisa stroked the soft fur around his ears, tears pressing at the corners of her eyes. She realized that, for both of them, tomorrow's vet tests would be a monumental turning point. Either they'd face yet another uphill battle, or discover that Chance had been fighting a hidden war all along. Lisa barely slept the night before Chance's scheduled veterinary tests. Anxious thoughts swirled in her mind. What if the scans revealed a serious illness? What if her parents decided they couldn't handle a dog with special needs on top of a mounting medical crisis? As the morning sun broke through her bedroom curtains, Lisa got up quietly, put on her sneakers, and tiptoed downstairs to check on Chance. He lay curled in his small dog bed, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Deaf though he was, He somehow sensed her presence and lifted his head the moment she approached, nuzzling her hand as she stroked his ears. Despite her worry, she felt a flicker of optimism. Chance always had that effect on her. Maybe this would be just another hurdle they could clear together. A few hours later, the three of them, Lisa, her father Dennis, and Chance, stepped into the vet's clinic. Dennis attempted to project calm, but Lisa could tell he was on edge. The waiting room was relatively quiet, save for the occasional bark from a dog in a carrier. Chance clung to Lisa's leg, trembling when larger dogs walked past. He had grown accustomed to Lisa's signals, though, so when she gently touched his collar and gave a quick downward wave of her hand, he relaxed a fraction, realizing she was telling him to stay. When a veterinary assistant finally guided them into an exam room, Lisa's heart pounded. The usual routine, weight check, quick body inspection, went smoothly, although the assistant frowned slightly at the reading on the scale. "He hasn't gained as much weight as we hoped since his last visit," she noted politely, jotting figures down. Dennis pressed his lips together in concern. Next came the x-rays. Lisa helped steady Chance on the table, whispering soothing words he couldn't hear, but hoping the calm tone and gentle touches would reassure him. The hum of the machine felt unnervingly loud, even though she knew it wouldn't bother Chance's ears. The entire process took only minutes, but by the time they returned to the exam room, Lisa's nerves were on edge. She cradled Chance in her arms, feeling his small heart racing against her own. After a short wait, the veterinarian, Dr. Ramirez, entered with furrowed brows and a folder of printed scans. Lisa's stomach flipped. She cast a quick glance at her father, who looked equally uneasy. Then Dr. Ramirez placed the X-ray images on a lit display. "I'm concerned about these dark areas around Chance's esophagus and chest," she explained, pointing to hazy patches on the images. "They might indicate a congenital defect called megasophagus, or even an underlying heart issue. We'll need further tests, blood work, possibly an ultrasound, to pinpoint exactly what's going on." Lisa's face paled. Megasophagus. She'd read about it in her late-night research, a condition that can make swallowing difficult, leading to malnutrition and repeated risk of aspiration pneumonia. If Chance had that, it would require specialized feeding methods, like elevating his food bowl or using a special chair, to help gravity guide the food properly down his throat. Dennis exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "So what does that mean for his long-term health?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Well," Dr. Ramirez began cautiously, "some dogs live full lives if managed properly. Others might struggle with recurring infections, and it does require a lot of extra care. Depending on what the blood tests and ultrasounds show too, we'll know more. The good news is you caught potential symptoms early, so we have a chance to intervene." The drive home felt like a blur. Lisa kept a hand on Chance's collar, trying to keep him calm in the back seat. But her mind raced with worst-case scenarios. She wondered if her parents, already concerned about the challenges of raising a deaf puppy, would find this new layer of complication too much to handle. She also worried about the cost of repeated vet visits and special equipment. The heavy silence from her dad only fueled her anxiety. By the time they pulled into the driveway, Lisa felt emotionally drained. Once inside, she gently placed Chance in his kennel with a soft blanket, making sure he could see her face as she touched her palm to her chest, a sign she'd been using for "it's okay." But was it? Her father slumped at the kitchen table, elbows on the surface, face in his hands. "Lisa, I just need a minute," he murmured. "Go check on your mother, she's worried too." Lisa nodded, swallowing her fears. Upstairs, she found her mom in the living room, wearing the same uneasy expression. "Do we have any results yet?" Margaret asked quietly, glancing over Lisa's shoulder for a sign of Dennis. "Not definitive," Lisa replied. "They suspect a condition that will require special feeding techniques and maybe more medicine. We'll need an ultrasound for confirmation." Margaret's eyes drifted to the window, where she spotted Chance's makeshift dog run outside. "Your father and I will have to discuss the logistics. Honey, this is a lot." Lisa's throat tightened. She understood the unspoken implication. We might not be able to keep him. The thought of giving Chance up, especially after he'd come so far, felt like betrayal. Yet she also knew her parents had a valid point. Her family's budget was already stretched thin, and they had no guarantee this condition would be manageable. That afternoon, Lisa took Chance for a walk around the neighborhood, partly to clear her head. She used a gentle harness so she could guide him with taps and signals. True to his nature, Chance sniffed happily along the sidewalk, oblivious to the fact that his future hung in a precarious balance. But for Lisa, each tail wag felt bittersweet, a stark reminder of what she might lose. Neighbors cast furtive glances as they walked by, whispering about the deaf dog and the troubled family trying to care for him. She caught sight of Mrs. Hayworth peering from behind her curtains, still disapproving. Ignoring the stares, Lisa knelt next to Chance when he paused at a patch of grass. "I'll fight for you," she thought, even if she couldn't say it aloud in a way he'd hear. She stroked his soft ears, wishing she could shield him from every scornful look, every obstacle life had thrown at him. That night, after setting Chance up with a cozy bed in Lisa's room, her parents called her downstairs. They had a hushed conversation about finances, schedules, and the emotional toll. Lisa stood, heart pounding, fearing a decision to rehome Chance. Instead, Margaret reached over and placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "We haven't decided anything final," she said, "but we can't make choices until we have the full medical picture. We'll wait for the test results. In the meantime, we'll do our best to help you care for him, okay?" Though it wasn't a guarantee, Lisa felt tears of relief prick her eyes. She managed a nod, too choked up to speak. The message was clear. Chance had a temporary reprieve. Whether he would claim a permanent place in their family would depend on what the tests revealed, and how far they were all willing to go to save a puppy the world had already labeled broken. In the days that followed, Lisa lived in a constant state of hyper-awareness, waiting for the phone to ring with the results of Chance's additional tests. Every time it buzzed, her stomach tightened and she'd rush to answer, only to find it was just a friend from school or a telemarketer. She jotted anxious notes in her journal about megaesophagus, heart conditions, special feeding techniques, anything that might help Chance if the worst-case scenario turned out to be true. Meanwhile, Chance seemed blissfully unaware of the tension. He bounded around the house with an awkward exuberance that sometimes sent furniture skidding and knocked books off shelves. Lisa took to tapping the floor lightly in each new room before entering, ensuring the pup wouldn't startle at her sudden presence. Despite his deafness, Chance watched her closely. He'd learned to follow her hands and eyes. Whenever her gaze flicked to a patch of sunlight, for instance, he'd trot over to investigate, as if reading unspoken cues in her body language. One afternoon, Lisa decided it was time to try some specialized feeding techniques she'd discovered online. If indeed Chance had a swallowing issue, feeding him upright could alleviate stress on his esophagus. She didn't own a Bailey chair, the special contraption often used for dogs with megaesophagus, so she improvised. Tearing open an old cardboard box, she fashioned a makeshift backrest in the corner of the kitchen. She then lifted Chance gently, coaxing him to sit upright against the cardboard, while she held a shallow dish of soft puppy food under his nose. At first, he wriggled and squirmed, more puzzled than fearful. Lisa let him lick some of the food from her fingertips, guiding it slowly to his mouth. She repeated the motion, letting him swallow and waiting for any sign of coughing. Though awkward, the technique seemed to work. Chance managed to eat half his meal without choking or gagging. Lisa beamed, ignoring the cramp in her arm from holding the dish so steadily. Just then, her mom Margaret walked in, pausing at the sight. "Is this safe?" she asked, genuine concern threading her voice. "It might help if he does have that swallowing problem," Lisa explained. "I read about it. Keeping him upright makes gravity do the work." Margaret nodded, a hint of reluctant admiration in her eyes. "All right. I'll bring a few more towels so we don't end up with food everywhere." Their small kitchen turned into an impromptu feeding station. Lisa's dad, Dennis, even poked his head in, eyebrows rising at the sight of his daughter bent over a piece of cardboard, guiding morsels of wet food to a curious puppy's mouth. Though he said nothing, Lisa noticed he lingered a moment, as if wanting to understand this new routine. That evening, she scrolled through social media on her phone, ignoring the usual wave of dog memes and cat videos. searching specifically for success stories about deaf dogs with medical conditions. She found a group dedicated to special needs pups, where owners from around the world traded tips, from sign language commands to homemade Bailey chair blueprints. Encouraged, Lisa joined and introduced herself and Chance in a heartfelt post. Within hours, she received supportive comments. "Don't give up. My dog was given 6 months to live, and now he's 4 years old. You're doing a wonderful thing." The next day, Lisa shared this online community with her parents, eager to show them real-life proof that special needs dogs could lead happy lives. Margaret seemed moved by the stories, while Dennis simply nodded, arms folded. "It's good people are out there trying," he said, "but let's see what the vet says before we get our hopes too high." 2 more days passed. No call from the vet. In that time, Chance's cough worsened slightly. Though still intermittent, each hacking sound made Lisa's heart pound. She noticed it happened more often after he played hard or ate quickly. She adjusted her schedule, setting aside more time to feed him in small increments. This diligence grated on her family. They missed having a normal routine, but no one complained outright. Even her father occasionally watched Lisa feed Chance upright and offered a dry remark, like, "Guess we won't be feeding him table scraps anytime soon," which, in its own way, signaled acceptance. Just as Lisa began to think she'd lose her mind waiting for the phone to ring, the call finally came, mid-morning on a Saturday. She nearly dropped the handset in her rush to answer. Dr. Ramirez's voice, calm but measured, spilled through the receiver. Lisa flagged her parents over, putting the call on speaker. "I have Chance's blood work and ultrasound results," the vet began. "We did detect some mild enlargement in his esophagus. At this stage, it's not full-blown mega-esophagus, but he's definitely at risk for more severe symptoms as he grows. As for his heart, it shows some irregularities, not a major defect, but enough to warrant follow-up. There's a possibility of future complications, though it's not immediately life-threatening." Lisa let out a shaky breath, half relief, half dread. Dennis pressed further. "So, what's the plan?" "Well, we can manage this," Dr. Ramirez continued. "Elevated feeding like you've been doing, small frequent meals and regular checkups to monitor his growth. If we stay on top of this, there's a decent chance, she paused, smiling at her own inadvertent pun, "can lead a relatively normal life. We'll also want to recheck his heart in a few months, maybe get him on mild meds if needed." They hung up, caught between 2 emotions, the relief that Chance didn't require immediate surgery, and the sobering reality that a lifelong regimen awaited them. Lisa turned to her parents, hands trembling. "So we can keep him, right? As long as we follow the vet's instructions." Margaret and Dennis exchanged a long look. Lisa's throat went dry. Finally, her mom nodded slowly. "He's part of our family now. We'll do what it takes." Lisa blinked back tears, kneeling to scoop Chance into her arms. Deaf though he was, the puppy turned toward the vibration of her sobs, nuzzling her cheek. For a moment, she felt her chest swell with gratitude, and a certain pride that all her sleepless nights and frantic research weren't for nothing. That afternoon, Lisa tried to settle into the new normal. She set up a feeding schedule pinned to the fridge, 4 small meals a day, each one carefully measured. She started browsing online for a second-hand Bailey chair, hoping to give her arms a break and Chance some stability. Her father measured the corners of the kitchen, muttering about how best to fit a contraption there. Even her mother sketched a design on scratch paper, wearing the same thoughtful expression she used when rearranging furniture. From the living room window, Lisa spotted their neighbor, Mrs. Hayworth, peering through lace curtains. A jolt of anxiety twisted in her gut. Would the woman keep complaining or report them to animal control? But Lisa squared her shoulders. She was ready to show anyone who doubted them that Chance wasn't just another stray or a hopeless case. He was living proof that care and compassion could overcome enormous odds. With each subtle wag of Chance's tail, each trusting glance he cast her way, Lisa felt a growing sense of purpose. Their journey was far from easy, but for the first time since she'd found him quivering in that alley, hope outweighed fear. And as she patted his head, her mind echoed with a promise: "We'll face whatever comes next, together." Just days after finalizing Chance's feeding schedule, life at Lisa's home fell into a new but fragile rhythm. Mornings began with a gentle wake-up for both Lisa and the puppy, who'd learned to expect her soft touches on his shoulder when it was time to rise. Then came the careful, upright feeding routine. Lisa held him in place, while her mum offered a small bowl of mashed kibble or prescription puppy food, as recommended by Dr. Ramirez. Each session took a good 15 minutes, but the slow, deliberate pace kept Chance from choking or gagging, progress that filled Lisa with cautious optimism. Outside the house, however, tension still simmered. One afternoon, as Lisa quietly slipped out the front door with Chance in her arms, she nearly collided with her neighbor, Mrs. Hayworth. The older woman scowled, clutching a small stack of mail. "Is that dog still coughing all night?" she demanded, peering down at the puppy. Lisa stiffened. "He's improving, actually, and he doesn't bark or howl, so he shouldn't bother you." She tried to keep her voice even, not wanting to inflame the situation. "Humph," the woman sniffed, eyeing the harness Lisa held in her other hand. "I just hope you keep him under control. My husband and I have already been woken up once by your racket." Lisa's cheeks burned. Chance was deaf, so he wasn't the one making noise, but she bit her tongue rather than argue. She gently set the puppy on the grass, where he sniffed the lawn eagerly. Trying to appear casual, Lisa gave a small wave of her hand in a follow gesture. Chance bounded forward, nearly tangling Lisa in the leash, and Lisa flushed again under Mrs. Hayworth's disapproving glare. Back inside, she found her dad hunched over the living room coffee table, poring over a stack of vet bills and notes. He lifted his gaze when Lisa walked in with Chance trotting by her side. A flicker of sympathy crossed his features. "Everything okay out there?" Lisa let out a breath. Just the neighbor complaining again. She knelt to remove Chance's harness, giving him a reassuring scratch behind the ears. "I wish people would realize he can't cause the kind of noise they're blaming on him." Dennis nodded grimly. "It's not fair, but try to let it go. We have bigger things to handle, like paying these bills." He tapped a paper that detailed the cost of the upcoming recheck ultrasound for Chance's heart. "I talked with your mum, and we agree we'll manage somehow, but it means no family vacation this year." Lisa's stomach twisted with guilt. "I'm sorry, Dad, I know this is a lot." He reached over, giving her shoulder a squeeze. "Don't apologize. You love him, and we're not giving up. Just might be a lean few months." Buoyed by her dad's quiet resolve, Lisa set about searching for ways to offset the rising veterinary costs. She made a simple flyer titled "Help Chance Thrive," with a picture of the puppy, listing out his special needs. With her mom's permission, she pinned the flyers on community boards around town, at the local library, grocery store, and even her school's front office. She didn't outright beg for money, but mentioned that any donated dog supplies or used medical equipment, like an adjustable feeding chair, would help them greatly. To her surprise, she received a call a few days later from a man named Glenn, who owned a carpentry workshop. He said he'd seen the flyer and wanted to help build a custom feeding chair at no cost, using leftover wood. Excited, Lisa showed him the diagrams she'd found online. Glenn nodded thoughtfully, promising he'd have a prototype soon. Lisa practically floated home, heart pounding with gratitude for a stranger's kindness. That week, Lisa tried to keep Chance's daily routines consistent. Each time she fed him upright, her arms supported his small body while he ate. She introduced short bursts of training sessions too, reinforcing simple hand signals he'd already learned. Come, sit, stay. Though he was easily distracted, the puppy's enthusiasm never waned. His eyes followed Lisa's every movement, and each successful sit made her grin with pride. Sometimes, her mum or dad would watch from the sidelines, sipping coffee and giving nods of approval when Chance complied. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. One evening, after a particularly smooth day of training, Lisa noticed Chance acting lethargic. He seemed reluctant to stand, and his breathing was heavier than normal. At first, she chalked it up to exhaustion. Maybe they'd worked him too hard. Yet that night, she awoke to a soft whining sound. In a panic, she switched on the bedside lamp. Chance's sides were heaving, and his muzzle felt alarmingly hot. He didn't bark, he couldn't, but he panted and trembled in a way that filled her with dread. Heart pounding, Lisa woke her mom. Together, they wrapped Chance in a blanket and rushed him to an emergency vet clinic across town. The fluorescent lights of the waiting room cast harsh shadows as Lisa cradled the puppy in her arms. After what felt like an eternity, a veterinarian called them back. Dr. Gupta, a calm presence with kind eyes, listened carefully to Lisa's account before running a quick exam. He took Chance's temperature and frowned. He's running a fever. Could be an infection or possibly pneumonia. With the esophagus issue, there's always a risk of aspirating food into his lungs. Dr. Gupta patted Lisa's hand gently. We'll run a chest x-ray to confirm. Lisa's mind whirled. Pneumonia. She'd read about that. If Chance was aspirating even small amounts of food or water, he could develop fluid in his lungs. And if it's bad, she thought, he might not make it. She bit down on her lip, refusing to let tears fall just yet. They waited in a sterile side room for results. Margaret, having driven them there, sat close by. Anxiety etched deep lines on her face. Finally, Dr. Gupta re-emerged, carrying a set of digital scans. There's some cloudiness in his lungs. Mild pneumonia, it looks like, he reported softly. We caught it early, so antibiotics and careful monitoring should help. We'll need to keep him here for a day or two on IV fluids, just to be safe. Lisa nodded, swallowing hard. The idea of leaving Chance alone in a kennel, without her hand signals or comforting presence, made her chest tighten. But she knew it was for the best. He needed professional care. Gently, she leaned over and pressed her forehead to the puppy's. He couldn't hear her whispered words of reassurance, but maybe he could feel the warmth of her breath or the trembling of her body. You're gonna pull through this, she mouthed, tears shining in her eyes. The nurse ushered them out, explaining they'd let Lisa visit briefly the next day. Driving home in a somber silence, Lisa's mind churned with doubts. Was she responsible for pushing him too hard? Should she have been more careful during feeding? Her mom squeezed her hand. He'll be okay, sweetie. You did the right thing bringing him in. Lisa managed a shaky nod, but as they pulled into their driveway, she spotted a figure moving behind Mrs. Hayworth's curtain again, a silent observer, her outline rigid. In that moment, Lisa felt the weight of an entire world stacked against Chance's survival. Health complications, veterinary costs, neighborhood hostility. How much more could one deaf puppy endure? Yet as she climbed the stairs to her bedroom, Lisa clenched her fists in quiet determination. She wouldn't fail him, couldn't fail him. She would figure out a way to pay for his treatment, keep him safe, and prove, once and for all, that every life deserves a second chance. Even if it meant fighting battles on multiple fronts, she refused to let heartbreak become the final word in Chance's story. Lisa paced the length of the living room, her stomach twisting into knots as she stared at the silent phone on the coffee table. Chance had been at the emergency clinic overnight, receiving IV fluids and antibiotics for pneumonia. Exhaustion etched dark circles under her eyes. She'd barely slept, haunted by the memory of his frantic breathing and the fear that she hadn't done enough. Her parents hovered, exchanging worried glances. Dennis repeatedly checked his watch, while Margaret sipped lukewarm coffee, lost in thought. They'd all agreed to let Lisa stay home from school until they heard from Dr. Gupta about Chance's condition. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Finally, near midday, the phone rang. Lisa snatched it up so fast she nearly dropped it. "Hello, Lisa?" Dr. Gupta's tone was calm but professional. Chance had a stable night. His fever broke early this morning, and the chest x-ray shows a bit less fluid in his lungs. Relief flooded Lisa so suddenly that her knees threatened to buckle. That's good, right?" "Yes," Dr. Gupta confirmed, "but he's still not out of the woods. We'll keep him another night for observation to ensure the antibiotics are fully doing their job." After she hung up, Lisa relayed the update to her parents, who each let out a breath they seemed to have been holding for hours. "Stable," Dennis repeated, pressing a hand to his forehead. "We can handle that." Margaret forced a small smile. "At least he's improving. I'm sure Dr. Gupta will call if anything changes." With that small glimmer of hope, Lisa tried to focus on the silver lining. She emailed her teachers to catch up on class assignments, but her thoughts drifted repeatedly to the clinic's sterile corridors. She kept picturing Chance in a kennel, alone and deaf, surrounded by unfamiliar humans whose voices he couldn't hear. Would he feel abandoned? Did he wonder where she was? That afternoon, the doorbell rang, jolting the entire family. Lisa tensed, expecting to see a neighbor with yet another complaint. Instead, she found a delivery driver holding a large, flat package. Confused, she signed for it. As she set it on the kitchen table, the return label caught her eye. Glenn's woodshop. Her heart skipped. Glenn, the carpenter she'd met after posting flyers for Chance, must have finished the custom feeding chair. She eagerly tore open the cardboard, revealing a beautifully crafted wooden frame complete with adjustable panels, a harness strap, and a small tray at chest height. It was far sturdier and more polished than Lisa had dared hope. A handwritten note nestled among the packing materials read, "Lisa, I hope this chair helps Chance feel a bit more at ease during mealtimes. Keep up the good fight. Glenn." Lisa's eyes misted over. She ran a hand over the smooth wood, envisioning the moment Chance could try it out, maybe after he recovered from pneumonia. She was still admiring the craftsmanship when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number popped onto the screen. "Hi, it's Pauline from the dog training center. Saw your flyer. Let me know if you need help introducing the feeding chair or practicing sign commands." "Looks like the universe is finally cutting us some slack," she murmured with a watery smile. Her mother brushed a tear from her own eye. "We'll keep this ready for when Chance comes home." Even Dennis looked moved, nodding at the design's sturdy construction. "That's one kind-hearted carpenter," he said softly, stepping out to the garage, presumably to fetch tools and see if any adjustments were needed. But good news often brings a backlash, and that backlash arrived in the form of a letter taped to their front door the following morning. Lisa discovered it as she prepared to leave for the clinic, hoping for a brief visit with Chance. "To the owners of the dog known as Chance, we have received multiple complaints regarding disturbances and potential neglect. We will be conducting a follow-up inspection to assess the welfare of your animal, signed Regional Animal Services." Lisa's stomach lurched. She raced inside, waving the letter frantically. "Mom, Dad, look at this." Margaret's face drained of color. "Complaints? Neglect? That's absurd." Dennis rubbed his temples. "Must be our friendly neighbor. She's been complaining about him since day one." Lisa's eyes teared up. "Chance is literally in the hospital getting professional care. How can they accuse us of neglect?" Margaret forced a calming breath. "We'll set the record straight. Animal Services will see we're caring for him properly. We have vet records, receipts, everything." They resolved to handle it, but a thick knot of anxiety settled in Lisa's chest. She feared that a single bad impression or misunderstanding could threaten Chance's place in their family. It felt unfair. After all they'd done, they now had to defend themselves against false claims. Shortly after, Lisa left for the clinic. Dr. Gupta met her in the reception area, explaining that while Chance was still recovering, he was stable enough for a brief visit. She followed him through the antiseptic-scented corridors, heart pounding as they neared Chance's kennel. When she finally saw the pup, a sob caught in her throat. He looked small and frail under the fluorescent lights, an IV catheter taped to his foreleg. Yet the moment he sensed her arrival, maybe through vibrations or her scent, his tail thumped weakly against the kennel floor. Lisa gently slid onto a stool beside him. Dr. Gupta opened the kennel door enough for her to lean in, stroking Chance's ears in the way he found soothing. He placed his head against her hand, big eyes reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Even if he couldn't hear her voice, she repeated the sign for good boy, waving her hand in a small circle at her chest. Chance licked her fingers, as if to say, "Thank you for coming." "Is he going to be all right?" Lisa asked quietly. Dr. Gupta considered the question. "His lungs are clearing, and the antibiotics seem effective. If all goes well, we can discharge him tomorrow or the day after. But I need you to watch him closely at home. Any sign of difficulty breathing, you bring him straight back." Lisa nodded fervently. "I understand. I'll do whatever it takes." As the visit ended, she pressed her forehead gently against Chance's for a final moment, willing him to feel the warmth of her dedication. On her way out, she kept imagining a life free from pneumonia scares, free from neighbor disputes, a life where she could simply enjoy training her deaf puppy, teaching him new signs, and feeding him upright in the custom chair that now waited at home. But the real world rarely grants such serenity. With the neighbors' complaints looming and the unending medical bills piling up, Lisa sensed more hurdles ahead. Still, looking into Chance's trusting eyes, she made herself one promise. No matter what happened, she would stand by him. Whether it meant fending off bureaucratic scrutiny or going broke on vet expenses, she refused to abandon the dog who couldn't hear her voice, but had come to understand her heart better than anyone else ever could. Lisa barely slept a wink that night, her mind gnawing at the twin anxieties of Chance's health and the looming inspection from animal services. She was up before dawn, scouring the house for anything that might look neglectful. Old newspapers on the floor, half-chewed toys, even the faint smell of dog food lingering in the kitchen. By the time her parents woke, she was scrubbing corners of the living room with a bucket of soapy water. "Sweetheart, you'll wear yourself out," her mom said gently, rubbing Lisa's back. "We have all morning to prepare. We can't give them any reason to doubt how much we care for Chance," Lisa muttered, attacking a stubborn scuff mark on the baseboard. "They already think we're the bad guys." Margaret exchanged a worried glance with Dennis, who nodded in grim agreement. The tension in the air reminded Lisa of the night they'd first brought Chance home, a mixture of hope and fear swirling in an uneasy cocktail. Later that morning, a grey sedan pulled up outside the house. Lisa's stomach clenched as a woman with a clipboard stepped out, wearing a crisp polo shirt embroidered with the Animal Services logo. She introduced herself as Officer Jane Alvarez, a soft-spoken individual with keen eyes that missed nothing. Lisa forced a polite smile, fighting the urge to appear defensive. "I understand you've been dealing with some complaints regarding a special needs puppy," Officer Alvarez began, once everyone was seated around the living room. "I'm here to assess the dog's welfare and living conditions." Dennis cleared his throat. "Yes, well, Chance is actually at the veterinary clinic right now, recovering from pneumonia." He held up a stack of vet bills and signed forms to prove it. Alvarez nodded, leafing through them carefully. "It's good to see you're getting him professional care. Could you also show me where he usually sleeps and eats?" Grateful to have something concrete to do, Lisa led the officer through the house. She pointed out the custom feeding chair, proudly explaining how a kind carpenter named Glenn had built it so Chance could eat upright. She also showed her the crate in Lisa's bedroom, complete with soft bedding and water bowl. Alvarez asked a series of probing questions, everything from how they handled the dog's deafness to the training regimen Lisa used. Despite her calm tone, Lisa's nerves remained on edge. She recalled how a single misinterpretation could doom an animal in the eyes of authorities. But as the inspection progressed, Alvarez's posture seemed to soften. She checked the yard, noting that it was securely fenced and free from hazards. She glanced over the dog toys scattered around, a testament to hours of attempted play and training. Nothing, it seemed, suggested neglect or mistreatment. Returning to the living room, Alvarez took a moment to review her notes. "Given what I've seen and the evidence of ongoing veterinary care, it appears you're providing appropriate accommodations for a special needs dog." She paused, locking eyes with Lisa. "Have there been any incidents of aggression or unsanitary conditions we should know about?" Lisa's voice trembled slightly. "No. Chance is friendly with everyone who treats him kindly. He's just misunderstood by some people in the neighborhood." Alvarez nodded, making one last note. "I'll file a report stating that you are meeting the dog's welfare needs. However, please keep in mind we'll remain available if more complaints come in." Her gaze flicked toward the window, where the silhouette of Mrs. Hayworth's house loomed. Sometimes neighbors misread situations. Relief coursed through Lisa so powerfully that her legs wobbled. "Thank you," she whispered. When Officer Alvarez left, Lisa sagged onto the couch, tears of relief pricking her eyes. Her parents both exhaled long, weary breaths. "Well," Dennis said, a shaky laugh escaping him, "that's one crisis averted. Now we just need Chance home," Margaret added softly. They got that wish sooner than expected. Later that afternoon, Dr. Gupta called to say Chance had responded well to the antibiotics. "He's still weak," he cautioned, "but you can take him home as long as you follow a strict rest and feeding protocol." Lisa all but flew into the clinic lobby. The nurse led her to a small recovery area where Chance lay curled on a blanket. His ears perked the instant she approached, and he tried to stand, wobbling slightly. Tears stung Lisa's eyes as she lifted him gently, pressing her cheek against his fur. Even deaf, Chance leaned into the vibration of her words. "Doctor." Gupta gave final instructions about medication schedules and watchful feeding, urging them to come back for a follow-up in a week. The ride home felt surreal. Lisa cradled Chance in the back seat, carefully observing his breathing for any sign of relapse. Dennis drove slower than usual, as if he too recognized the fragility of their precious cargo. Pulling up to the house, they were greeted by Margaret, who had prepared a cozy nest of blankets in the living room. For the next few days, Lisa and her parents hovered like hawks, administering antibiotics according to a strict timetable. Each mealtime involved placing Chance in the new feeding chair Glenn had crafted, which he tolerated surprisingly well. It allowed Lisa to slip a dish of wet food under his chin, ensuring the lumps slid down without pooling in his throat. Chance seemed to appreciate the routine, though he'd occasionally paw at the wooden sides in confusion. Lisa soothed him with gentle strokes, signing "good boy" until he settled. One stormy evening, as Lisa carefully guided Chance from the feeding chair back to his blankets, the doorbell rang. Her father answered, revealing Glenn himself, a gentle smile on his weathered face. He'd come to check on the feeding chair. "Heard from Pauline at the training center you got the pup home," he explained, stepping inside. Lisa grinned as she showed him how Chance was eating. Glenn beamed like a proud craftsman, running his hand over the smooth wood. "That's exactly what I hoped," he murmured, eyes lingering on the puppy. Chance, sensing a new presence, waddled over, nose twitching. He pressed his muzzle against Glenn's leg as if thanking him. For a moment, the room filled with a sense of camaraderie, a small island of kindness in the swirling sea of challenges Lisa's family faced. Glenn shook Dennis's hand, accepting a quiet thanks for his generosity. But outside, the wind rattled the windows, rain battering the neighborhood. Lisa felt a shiver run through her, reminded of how swiftly peace could be shattered. As soon as Glenn left, she returned her focus to Chance, noticing he was breathing a bit faster than normal. A spike of alarm flared in her chest. Was he getting a fever again, or just anxious from the commotion? Grabbing a thermometer, she knelt by his blankets. Her parents hovered behind, equally concerned. When Lisa lifted it away, the reading was slightly elevated, but not dangerously so. Still, the tension never fully left the air. They all knew how fragile Chance's health remained. One wrong gust, one slip in feeding technique, and they could find themselves back in the emergency clinic. Late that night, Lisa stood by the window, watching rivulets of rain streak the glass. In the dim reflection, she saw the shape of Chance curled at her feet, dozing peacefully. His deafness once again struck her as both a blessing and a curse. While he couldn't hear the storm raging, he also couldn't be reassured by the soft hum of her voice. Instead, he relied on her presence, her gentle touch, and in that flickering moment of lightning outside, Lisa resolved that no matter how many storms battered their world, she would remain as steadfast as the custom feeding chair that gave him life day by day. Mornings now started with Lisa carefully checking Chance's breathing, her heart pounding until she heard his steady exhalations. The pup still had a faint rasp, but at least he wasn't gasping the way he had during the pneumonia scare. Each day, she and her parents meticulously followed Dr. Gupta's instructions. Multiple small meals, all fed upright in the chair, plus medication spaced exactly as prescribed. It was a disciplined routine, but Lisa found comfort in the structure. If she did everything by the book, maybe Chance would keep improving. Outside that delicate bubble of care, life marched on. Lisa returned to school, struggling to juggle her classes and homework with the demands of looking after a special needs dog. At lunch, her friends peppered her with questions. "How's your pup? You really feed him in a chair?" Some were intrigued and supportive. Others tossed offhand remarks about how sad it was that he couldn't hear. Lisa forced polite nods, biting back the urge to lecture them about how being deaf didn't make Chance any less of a dog. The real challenge lay in the hours before and after school. No matter how much she hurried home, she always worried about what might be waiting. Had Chance breathed okay through the day? Had her parents managed to feed him properly at lunch without Lisa's practiced hand signals? The minute she burst through the front door each afternoon, she'd scan the living room, relief flooding her whenever she spotted Chance wagging his tail or dozing with his muzzle on the soft blankets. One Thursday, Lisa came home to find her father in the kitchen, cradling the phone with a tight expression. "Yeah, I understand," he said quietly. "Thank you for letting us know." The moment he hung up, Lisa's pulse jumped. "What is it? Is something wrong with Chance?" Dennis shook his head, exhaling. "That was Animal Services again. The officer who visited said the neighbor filed another complaint, this time claiming your dog's constant coughing is a disturbance." "But Officer Alvarez said she's already documented that there's no violation." Lisa slumped into a chair, relief and anger warring inside her. "We're doing everything we can. I don't get why she hates him so much." Her father rubbed his temples. "People fear what they don't understand, maybe. Could be she's just a chronic complainer. Either way, we're not letting her nonsense ruin our progress." Progress was indeed happening, albeit slowly. Chance gained a little weight, and while his cough remained, it was less harsh. Pauline, the trainer from the dog center, began dropping by on weekends to show Lisa how to refine her hand signals. They worked in short sessions, so Chance wouldn't tire easily. Despite his challenges, the pup showed a remarkable eagerness to please, tail wagging each time he correctly responded to a new cue. One breezy Saturday, as Lisa and Pauline practiced commands in the backyard, they heard an abrupt shout from next door. Startled, Lisa spun around to see Mr. Hayworth, the neighbor's husband, peering over the fence with a sour expression. "Keep that mutt away from my roses," he barked. Sure enough, Chance had poked his nose through a gap in the fence boards, sniffing at the floral scent wafting through. Pauline raised a polite hand. "He's not damaging anything, sir. We're just training in a safe, enclosed area." Mr. Hayworth sneered. "I saw him hacking up a lung yesterday. Don't you dare get germs on my property." Lisa bit back a retort. Before she could respond, Pauline calmly took a step forward. "Sir, I understand your concerns, but this dog is under veterinary supervision. He's not contagious, just dealing with a chronic condition." "Humph." Mr. Hayworth gave Chance one last disgusted look before stomping inside his house. Lisa's shoulders sagged. She offered Pauline an apologetic glance. "I'm sorry. They've been like this from the start." Pauline patted Lisa's arm. "Don't let it discourage you. Chance can't hear their rude comments, and in time maybe they'll see he's not a threat." Even with these tensions, the small victories continued. Chance learned to wait patiently at the back door for a signal before trotting outside. He figured out that a firm palm facing him meant stay, which reduced the number of times he nearly plowed into furniture. Through it all, Lisa felt a growing sense of pride, watching him defy expectations day after day. Then came an unexpected expense that threatened to derail everything. While reviewing the latest veterinary bill, Margaret realized their monthly insurance premium had jumped, leaving the family budget in tatters. "We can't keep up at this pace, Lisa," she admitted that evening, voice trembling. "The checkups, the specialized food, the meds. We're barely making ends meet." Fear clutched Lisa's heart. She clung to Chance, who was curled on her lap. "But we're so close to stabilizing him," she pleaded. "Isn't there some other way?" Dennis sighed, shaking his head. "We might need to find a part-time job or side gig, all of us, or just me. It's not that we want to give up on him, honey, but we can't jeopardize everything else." That weekend, Lisa scoured online ads, local community boards, anywhere she might pick up small jobs, dog walking, lawn mowing, babysitting. She even reached out to the special needs dog group she'd joined, asking if they knew of financial aid programs. To her surprise, multiple members sent links to non-profits that offered grants or fundraising platforms for pets with medical conditions. Encouraged, Lisa spent hours crafting a heartfelt post about Chance's story, complete with pictures of him in his feeding chair. She posted it on a crowdfunding site, hoping strangers might donate a few dollars toward his ongoing treatment. In less than 2 days, the campaign raised nearly half of the initial goal. Messages poured in from people touched by the story of a deaf puppy battling health complications. Many wrote personal notes, mentioning how they'd once cared for a sick pet or how inspiring Lisa's dedication was. Lisa teared up reading them. She took each donation as a sign that maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone. However, the online support couldn't shield them from real-world friction. The Hayworths escalated their complaints, writing another letter to Animal Services, claiming that Chance's illness presented a public hazard. This time, though, the complaint earned little traction. Officer Alvarez had seen enough to know it wasn't valid. Yet the strain of living under constant scrutiny gnawed at Lisa's family. Each time they heard a knock on the door, Lisa's stomach flipped, half expecting more official letters or demands. One evening, after a stressful day, Lisa sat with Chance in the living room, stroking his soft ears while gazing at the half-finished Bailey chair across the room. Glenn had offered to make some improvements to stabilize it further. Chance sniffed her hand, picking up on her restless movements. He tilted his head as if asking what troubled her. Lisa felt tears prick her eyes. "If only you could understand how hard we're fighting," she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear a word. Yet when Chance licked her palm, it almost felt like he did understand, and that made all the difference. As the weeks passed, Lisa's family settled into a precarious balance, juggling Chance's specialized routine, school obligations, and the simmering tensions with their neighbors. Even so, each small win felt monumental. Chance gaining another pound, an online donor contributing a helpful sum, or Pauline praising Chance's progress during a training session. Yet Lisa could never fully shake the sense that she was walking a tightrope, one strong gust away from losing everything she'd fought so hard for. One crisp Saturday morning, the family decided to take Chance for a quick outing to the local park, just a short stroll to let him sniff the grass and feel the autumn breeze on his fur. They dressed him in a gentle harness, complete with reflective patches so passers-by could see him easily. As a precaution, Lisa pinned a small sign on his harness that read, "Deaf dog, approach slowly," hoping to ward off any sudden movements or loud voices that might startle him. The air felt lighter outside their house's tense perimeter, though Lisa remained vigilant, frequently checking Chance's breathing. With Dennis carrying a collapsible water bowl and Margaret holding a small bag of the special wet food, they were more prepared than most dog owners would ever need to be. Lisa took the lead, tapping the ground lightly before stepping forward so Chance wouldn't be startled by her pace. To her relief, the morning went smoothly at first. Chance trotted along with his trademark wobbly enthusiasm, occasionally glancing back at Lisa to confirm she was still there. Other park visitors, intrigued by the harness sign, gave friendly waves or asked polite questions about his deafness. Lisa smiled shyly, explaining how they used hand signals. Their genuine curiosity felt like a far cry from the hostility she'd grown used to. Eventually, they found an open patch of grass where they could rest. Dennis laid out a small blanket, while Margaret opened the container of wet food. Lisa positioned Chance upright against her legs, feeding him in measured spoonfuls to avoid any risk of choking. Though awkward, the routine had become second nature. Hold him at the correct angle, pause between bites, watch for any sign of coughing. That's when a shrill bark pierced the air, one that Chance couldn't hear, but Lisa felt reverberate through her chest. A large off-leash dog, a German Shepherd mix, came bounding toward them. The dog's owner, a distracted teenager with earbuds jammed in, was yards behind, calling out half-heartedly. Before Lisa could fully react, the shepherd skidded to a halt right in front of Chance, sniffing at him with intense curiosity. Chance caught the movement too late. He twisted his head to see what was happening and instantly tensed. Unable to hear the shepherd's growl or warning barks, Chance read only the other dog's stiff posture. He shrank back, eyes wide. Lisa's heart pounded. If the shepherd got aggressive, Chance wouldn't hear any warning growls or have time to retreat. Dennis stepped forward, arms out in a placating gesture, while Margaret tried to call to the distant teen, but everything happened too quickly. The shepherd bristled, baring its teeth. Chance, cornered and confused, gave an abrupt squeak and tried to back away, tangling in his harness. Lisa lunged forward, placing herself between the two dogs. "Hey!" she shouted, flailing her arm to get the shepherd's attention. The move distracted the larger dog enough for its owner to finally arrive, grabbing its collar. With a mumbled apology, he dragged the German shepherd off, who was still barking loudly. Lisa noticed passers-by staring, some with alarm, others with curiosity. Her parents helped calm Chance, checking him for injuries. He was unharmed but trembling, clearly shaken by the encounter. Back home, Lisa set Chance on the living room rug, gently massaging his ears while he settled. That park incident rattled them all, a stark reminder that the world was full of unpredictable dangers, some of which Chance might never perceive until it was too late. For him, even an ordinary bark could be a silent threat that blindsided him. Over dinner, the family discussed how to keep him safer. Margaret suggested a bright vest that read "Deaf Dog" in larger print. Dennis proposed they avoid busy parks or times when more dogs might be off-leash. She didn't want to limit Chance's experiences, but she also couldn't ignore the real risks. "I'll talk to Pauline," Lisa said. "Maybe there's a way to teach him to watch us whenever another dog approaches. That way we can signal him to stay calm." Her parents agreed, and for a few minutes hope fluttered in the air, another obstacle they might overcome together. But late that night, Lisa's phone buzzed with a text from a friend at school. "Hey, did you see the post about your dog on Nextdoor?" Lisa's stomach dropped. She navigated to the neighborhood forum and found a thread titled "Aggressive Deaf Dog in the Park." The post described a dangerous incident involving a large tan puppy that didn't respond to commands and nearly attacked another dog. Multiple neighbors chimed in, recounting rumors or half-truths, fueling an image of Chance as some unpredictable menace. One commenter suggested that owners of disabled animals shouldn't bring them out in public. Anger burned hot in Lisa's chest. She typed a furious reply, but paused to consider the backlash. Instead, she closed the app, tears of frustration brimming in her eyes. Did people really think Chance was the aggressor? She'd been right there, watching him cower in confusion. But now an online rumor could do real damage, spurring more complaints or fueling the already hostile neighbors' crusade. She spent a restless night drafting potential responses in her head. Maybe she could share the truth, post pictures or video showing how gently Chance interacted with others. But what if it just drew more scrutiny, more hateful comments about his health or her family's ability to care for him? Come morning, she decided to talk it over with her parents. Dennis shook his head in dismay at the Nextdoor post. Social media can be a real powder keg. One rumor and it spirals. Margaret read through the thread with a grim frown. "I'd clarify the facts calmly and respectfully," she suggested. "Tell them Chance isn't aggressive, that we have a trainer, vet documents, everything." Taking a breath, Lisa opened her laptop and composed a careful reply. She explained that her dog was deaf, still recovering from pneumonia, and had been startled by the off-leash shepherd. She avoided pointing fingers. Instead, she invited anyone with doubts to meet Chance themselves. Pauline even chimed in with a supportive comment, verifying that he was well behaved during training sessions. Though a few neighbors thanked Lisa for clarifying, the negativity persisted. Some insisted that special needs animals belonged at home, while others questioned whether a deaf dog could ever be truly safe around children or other pets. The conversation battered Lisa's confidence. She'd worked so hard to show how capable Chance was, yet the tide of public opinion felt unrelenting. That afternoon, Pauline stopped by to check on Chance's training. She found Lisa brooding over her phone. Anger and hurt scrawled across her face. Gently, Pauline set a hand on her shoulder. "Words can sting, but they don't define you or Chance. He's come a long way. Focus on that." Lisa glanced at Chance, napping contentedly on his blankets. A wave of resolve surged through her. Yes, the negative chatter was loud, but it didn't erase the progress they'd made. If anything, it lit a fire in her chest. She wouldn't stop proving the naysayers wrong. She'd keep teaching Chance, feeding him upright, monitoring his health, and maybe, one day, the world would see him as she did, a sweet, resilient dog worthy of every effort. For a week, the online chatter about Chance raged on, each new thread on the neighborhood forum adding fuel to an already smoldering fire. Lisa tried her best to ignore it, but every snide remark or misinformed accusation found its way to her through classmates, concerned neighbors, or well-meaning friends sending screenshots. Though a handful of people defended Chance, the unrelenting negativity weighed heavily on Lisa's heart. It seemed that no matter how much she explained or how many photos she shared of Chance happily nuzzling a visiting toddler, some folks insisted he was a danger or a nuisance. Meanwhile, the house itself felt like a pressure cooker. Lisa's parents juggled their jobs, rising expenses, and frequent vet checkups. Bills arrived more often now, it seemed, each one reminding them how costly specialized dog care could be. Even with the success of Lisa's small crowdfunding campaign, there never seemed to be enough funds. Tension bled into everyday conversations. A single question from Lisa, like whether they could upgrade Chance's harness, might prompt exasperated sighs or frayed tempers. In the midst of this turmoil, Chance himself became a beacon of calm. He'd bounce eagerly when Lisa came home from school, tail wagging so hard his entire rear end wiggled. Though still prone to coughing fits, he was slowly building stamina. Pauline's weekend training sessions were paying off too. The puppy recognized half a dozen hand signals, from sit to stay, with growing confidence. Watching him respond to visual cues, Lisa felt an unspoken connection strengthen between them, a language built entirely on trust and observation rather than sound. That connection was tested one blustery afternoon when a pair of local reporters showed up unannounced, cameras in tow. Apparently, the swirling rumors about the aggressive deaf dog had attracted local media curiosity. Lisa's mother answered the door, startled to see a woman with a microphone in hand and a cameraman behind her. They asked if they could film a short segment for an upcoming news piece on controversial animals in the neighborhood. Margaret hesitated, then called Lisa and Dennis into the entryway to discuss. "Absolutely not," Dennis said at once, crossing his arms. "We've had enough drama." But Lisa, recalling how easily false narratives spread online, took a moment to consider. Maybe showing Chance in a positive light could help, she ventured, glancing at her parents. If they see how sweet he is, they might stop believing the lies. Margaret exchanged a worried look with Dennis. After a tense beat, he exhaled. "All right," he relented. "But we set the terms. 5 minutes, max, and no sensational headlines." Outside, the gusty wind whipped leaves across the yard as the reporters set up. Lisa held Chance in her arms, offering him a reassuring stroke while the journalist asked a flurry of questions about his health and behavior. Lisa explained how he was deaf from birth, how they used sign language for training, and how his pneumonia required careful feeding. Whenever the reporter pressed about aggression, Lisa calmly countered with details of the park incident and how the other dog had approached them off-leash. Chance, for his part, seemed mildly curious about the camera, sniffing at the lens when it drew too close. Though he couldn't hear the clamor or the wind-blown chatter of neighbors peeking from across the street, he sensed Lisa's tension. She tried to keep her body relaxed so he wouldn't pick up on her nerves. In that fleeting moment, with a camera focused on them, she silently prayed the footage would show the world what she saw: a gentle, vulnerable pup who just needed understanding. The reporters thanked them and left, promising to air the segment later in the week. The whole family exhaled as their car disappeared around the corner. For the next few days, Lisa oscillated between hope and dread. What if the news piece amplified the negative rumors instead of dispelling them? When the segment finally aired during the local nightly broadcast, Lisa's heart pounded as they all gathered in front of the TV. The reporter introduced the story as "Deaf Dog Sparks Community Debate." Immediately, Lisa's stomach sank. Debate felt too neutral, almost trivializing the real challenges they faced. But as the footage rolled, showing Lisa with Chance in her arms, explaining his condition, she felt a surge of pride. The reporter concluded with a gentle note about how the family was demonstrating unwavering commitment to a special needs animal. While not exactly a glowing endorsement, it wasn't the hatchet job Lisa feared. She spotted a quick on-screen interview with Pauline, who praised Chance's sweet nature. However, they also included a brief clip of a neighbor, though not the Hayworths, complaining about constant barking that Lisa knew Chance couldn't be making. She huffed in frustration, but at least the segment ended on a hopeful note. Maybe the tide would turn, even just a little. That glimmer of optimism proved short-lived. The next day, An anonymous user posted a scathing critique on the neighborhood forum, accusing Lisa's family of lying for sympathy and claiming any dog that can't hear poses a threat to public safety. Some users piled on with similar sentiments, while others told them to mind their own business. The online hostility escalated, overshadowing the more balanced portrayal from the news. At home, the tension soared. Dennis spent hours after work poring over financial spreadsheets, sometimes snapping at Lisa if she asked about ordering more prescription dog food. Margaret, already fatigued by her job and daily chores, began complaining of headaches and sleepless nights. They all loved Chance, but the constant barrage, both financial and social, was wearing them down. Lisa overheard one heated conversation late at night, her parents speaking in hushed, urgent tones about how much more stress they could handle. Worried that her family might be nearing a breaking point, Lisa took a radical step. She wrote a heartfelt open letter on the Nextdoor platform, explaining how they had never meant to cause tension, how they funded Chance's care largely through their own sacrifice, and how the dog's deafness posed no inherent danger. She posted photos of him gently interacting with children, wearing his harness at the park, and calmly undergoing his medical treatments. Then she closed with an invitation for any skeptical neighbor to visit them and see Chance in person before judging him. Her post stirred the pot again, drawing a flood of responses, some supportive, some antagonistic. A few neighbors expressed surprise, saying they hadn't realized how extensive Chance's health issues were. Others doubled down on their fears. Through it all, Lisa clung to the handful of voices that spoke up in solidarity, including folks who'd once been indifferent, but now saw the family's genuine love for their dog. One message in particular warmed her heart, a private note from a woman named Teresa, who admitted she'd previously believed the rumors. After watching the news segment and reading Lisa's letter, she realized how biased the gossip had been. "I'd like to meet Chance," Teresa wrote. "I'm sorry for being part of the mob mentality." A small spark of hope flared in Lisa's chest. Perhaps the tide could shift, one person at a time. She invited Teresa over for a brief visit that weekend, planning to show her exactly how calm and friendly Chance was. Still, doubt gnawed at her. The hostility swirling around them wasn't diminishing overall, and each day her parents seemed more strained. "If it comes to a choice between our family's well-being and keeping Chance," her mum had started to say one evening, trailing off as tears gathered in her eyes. Lisa understood the unspoken threat. If they couldn't find peace in their own neighborhood, or if medical bills became an impossible burden, they might have no option left but to rehome the dog, and that possibility haunted Lisa's every waking thought. If only the rest of the world could see what she saw when she looked at Chance, a life that had already overcome so many obstacles and still offered pure, unwavering devotion. With each labored breath he took, Lisa felt her resolve to protect him harden like steel. Yet she knew the day was coming when they'd need a final answer. How far could they push themselves, and how much heartbreak could they endure, before the very love that bound them to this deaf puppy became the reason they had to let him go? Saturday arrived cool and overcast, a grey sky threatening rain but never quite delivering. Lisa couldn't shake the knot of anticipation in her stomach as she waited for Teresa, the neighbor who had reached out with an apology on Nextdoor. This would be the first time anyone who once believed the negative rumors actually came to see Chance. If Teresa had a good experience, maybe word would spread that the puppy wasn't the monster some made him out to be. Margaret fluttered about the living room, straightening cushions and picking up stray dog toys. Dennis lingered in the kitchen, arms folded tightly across his chest, occasionally checking his phone. Even though he supported Lisa's efforts, he was clearly on edge. "If this doesn't go well," he muttered at one point, trailing off when Lisa shot him a pleading look. Chance, oblivious to the tension, dozed in his custom feeding chair, which had become a familiar resting spot whenever he wasn't playing or training. Each time the floor vibrated, someone walked too heavily or dropped something, he'd open his eyes, ears perking in Lisa's direction for reassurance. She felt a surge of protective affection every time she caught his gaze. Finally, the doorbell rang. Lisa's heart thumped as she rushed to answer. Teresa stood on the porch, clutching a small bag of dog treats and wearing a tentative smile. She was a middle-aged woman with warm brown eyes and an apologetic tilt to her shoulders. "Hi, I'm Teresa," she said, voice quivering slightly. "Thanks for inviting me." Lisa ushered her in, introducing her parents, who managed polite nods. Margaret offered Teresa a seat, and Lisa fetched Chance from the chair, carefully guiding him to the living room rug. Teresa fidgeted, casting uncertain glances at the puppy's harness and a small name tag reading Deaf Dog. Lisa crouched next to him, using a gentle tap on the floor to signal that someone new was present. Chance blinked, nose twitching as he caught Teresa's unfamiliar scent. "I brought these," Teresa murmured, holding out the dog treats. "They're soft, so I thought it might help if he has trouble chewing or anything." Lisa's lips twitched into a grateful smile. "He can eat normal treats if he's not coughing, but the soft kind are best right now, so thank you." She took one from the bag, waved it slowly in front of Chance, then extended it toward Teresa. "Would you like to give it to him?" Teresa nodded hesitantly, leaning in to present the treat at Chance's eye level. For a moment, the puppy sniffed the air, uncertain. Then he edged forward and delicately took the morsel from her fingers, tail wagging slightly. He couldn't hear the pleased chuckle that escaped Teresa, but he seemed to sense her warmth. He lifted his head, tilting it as if asking for more. Lisa showed Teresa how to move slowly near Chance's head so he wouldn't startle, then stepped back to let her interact with him. The woman complied, whispering soothing phrases Chance couldn't hear but might feel through gentle vibrations. He inched closer, pressing his muzzle lightly against Teresa's knee. This unguarded display of trust made the woman's eyes shine with emotion. "I had no idea," she murmured, stroking Chance's soft ears with care. "I really believed the gossip. It's not that I'm mean. You read so many alarming posts, and you assume it's true." Dennis cleared his throat. "We understand. Social media can spin a lot of stories," he said, softening his earlier gruffness. "We just hope people see he's not aggressive." Teresa nodded, face clouding with remorse. "I'm sorry you all went through that. Truly." She stood up after a few minutes, smoothing her shirt. "I can't stay long, but I'm glad I came. I'll definitely tell the neighbors I was wrong about him. He's as sweet as you said." With that, Lisa and her parents thanked her, hearts buoyed by the promise that at least one skeptic had changed her mind. After Teresa left, the family shared a collective exhale. Chance, picking up on the lighter mood, trotted to Lisa, nuzzling her ankle. She bent down and scooped him up, hugging him tight. "That went really well," Margaret said, her eyes misty. "Maybe this is the start of something better." But life had other plans. The very next day, as Lisa sipped an early morning cup of tea, her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Ramirez, the primary vet who'd first diagnosed Chance's esophageal issues. "Need to discuss test results. Please call at your earliest convenience." Lisa's stomach twisted painfully. With trembling fingers, she dialed the clinic. When the vet answered, her tone was gentle but serious. "We've noticed some changes in Chance's most recent X-rays," Dr. Ramirez explained. "His lungs are okay, but the esophagus swelling suggests he may have an underlying vascular ring anomaly. Basically, a blood vessel wrapped around the esophagus. It's rare, but it can cause persistent or worsening issues even with careful feeding." Lisa's voice quavered. "Well, what do we do?" "If it's indeed a vascular ring anomaly, surgery could help, but it's a complicated procedure, and he's not exactly the strongest candidate. There's a fair amount of risk." Silent tears coursed down Lisa's cheeks as she absorbed the news. Another potential major surgery. More financial strain, more risk. After the call, her parents gathered around, each face etched with worry. Dennis gripped the back of a chair as though it were the only thing holding him upright. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, tears brimming in her eyes. "So we're talking about a big operation?" Margaret asked, voice trembling. "How expensive is that going to be? And can he survive it?" Lisa couldn't form words. She only managed to shake her head in helpless grief. They'd just begun to see a faint glimmer of acceptance in the community. Now they faced the very real possibility that Chance's life hung on a costly, high-risk medical intervention. Over the following hours, the family weighed their options, consulting with Dr. Ramirez clarified that an MRI would be needed to confirm the anomaly, and if present, a specialized surgeon might have to be brought in from out of state. The rough estimates soared into the thousands. The crowdfunding money was enough to cover day-to-day treatments, but not a procedure of this magnitude. Even so, the alternative was grim. For Chance, a lifetime of worsening swallowing problems, repeated pneumonia, or starvation if his esophagus became too constricted. Dennis rubbed his temples, voice tight. "I love that dog as much as anyone, but we're on the brink. We could lose the house if we keep piling on debts." Lisa's stomach lurched. Lose the house. The magnitude hit her like a punch to the gut. She glanced at Chance, who lay oblivious on a blanket near their feet, tail wagging slightly whenever someone glanced his way. He was so alive, so trusting. The thought of giving up on him felt inconceivable. Yet the reality bore down on them. A family of limited means, worn thin by medical bills, under social pressure from the neighborhood, now staring at a possible life-saving surgery that could cost more money than they'd ever expected to spend on a pet. Lisa's hands shook, tears threatening to spill again. Margaret stepped forward, her own eyes damp. "Let's not decide this second, okay? We need the MRI first to be certain. Let's at least see if the vascular ring anomaly is confirmed." Lisa latched onto that small reprieve. "Yes, one step at a time," she whispered, but her heart felt as though it was cracking. She'd do anything to give Chance the life he deserved, but what if anything meant hurting the family she loved? That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed with Chance curled at her side, his soft snores a comforting presence. Every so often, he'd nuzzle closer, and she'd place a hand on his flank, feeling the rhythmic rise and fall of his breathing. Could they find more fundraising avenues? Would the neighbors donate if they truly understood? The swirling questions offered no easy answers. At around midnight, as she stared at the shadows dancing on her bedroom ceiling, she whispered into the darkness, half hoping Chance could somehow sense her words, "I won't let you go without a fight." But an undercurrent of dread rippled through her. She remembered her mother's tearful whisper, "If it comes to a choice between our family's well-being and keeping Chance." A quiet sob escaped her throat. For the first time, she wondered if love alone would be enough to save him, or if heartbreak was just around the corner, waiting to deliver the final, devastating blow. Dawn broke with a cold drizzle that mirrored the heaviness in Lisa's heart. Another sleepless night had left her hollow-eyed, but she forced herself through morning chores, carefully measuring Chance's prescription wet food, placing him upright in his chair, and watching anxiously as he swallowed. Every slight cough or pause made her pulse spike. He seemed stable, yet fragile, like a candle flame threatening to gutter out at any breeze. Her parents were subdued too. The household had reached a tense, unspoken standoff. Everyone knew that if the MRI confirmed a costly vascular ring anomaly, hard decisions lay ahead. Lisa caught snippets of hushed conversations between her mum and dad, phrases like loan options, second mortgage, rescue group, and "we can't destroy ourselves." Each eavesdropped word felt like a knife to Lisa's chest, fueling her fear that they'd decide giving Chance up was their only recourse. Still, they'd agreed to proceed with the MRI. That, at least, offered a shred of hope. Margaret spent the morning on the phone with Dr. Ramirez, scheduling the procedure for the following week. Meanwhile, Dennis scoured local charities and grants that sometimes assisted with extraordinary pet medical costs. Their frantic research underscored the reality. If Chance needed complex surgery, it could easily soar into 5 figures. Insurance didn't cover it, and their crowdfunding page, while helpful, wasn't anywhere near that level. Pauline dropped by in the afternoon, sensing the tension from the moment she stepped inside. She found Lisa kneeling beside Chance, who was curled on a blanket, head resting against Lisa's hand. The trainer lowered herself quietly, a sympathetic look on her face. "I heard the news about the possible vascular ring anomaly," she said softly. "How are you holding up?" Lisa swallowed back tears. "I'm scared. If it's confirmed, the surgery is expensive, really expensive. My parents they don't know if we can handle it." Pauline's expression was troubled, but she reached out to stroke Chance's ears. "I've seen cases like this before, Lisa, and I know it can feel impossible. But sometimes specialists work out payment plans or rescues partner with you. Don't lose hope just yet. They tried a short training session, but Lisa's heart wasn't in it. Chance picked up on her disquiet, turning his head at odd intervals as if searching for the comfort of her gaze. Even with Pauline's patient guidance, they ended early. Pauline offered a small hug before leaving. "Call me if you need anything," she whispered. That evening, the family gathered in the living room, the silence broken only by the hum of the heater. Dennis cleared his throat. "We need to talk about a plan if the MRI confirms the worst," he said gruffly. "It doesn't mean we give up, but we have to be realistic. We could approach a specialized rescue for deaf dogs with medical issues. They might have the resources." "No!" Lisa's shout cracked like a whip through the hush. Chance jerked awake from his nap, startled by the vibration in the floor. She immediately softened her tone, pressing a hand to his flank in apology. "I won't let him go. We've come too far." Margaret's eyes glistened. "Lisa, please understand. We love him. But what if the surgery is beyond our means? Even if we bankrupt ourselves, there's no guarantee he'll survive the operation." The heartbreak would be. Tears welled in Lisa's eyes, and she stood abruptly. "You think giving him away to strangers wouldn't break my heart?" She scooped Chance into her arms, the puppy sensing her distress and licking her chin. "He'll be terrified, alone. Nobody will know his hand signals or how to feed him properly, or that he hates it when someone sneaks up behind him." Dennis held up a hand to calm her. "We're not making any final decisions yet, but we'd be irresponsible not to consider every option. Do you want him to suffer if we can't get him the treatment in time?" Lisa's throat tightened. She glanced down at Chance's trusting eyes. The idea of him languishing in some unfamiliar place was intolerable, but so was the thought of him dying under her care because she couldn't afford the surgery. The weight of that conflict pressed on her chest, stealing her breath. She fled to her room, hugging Chance close. There, she opened her laptop and scrolled through the messages on the Special Needs Dog Forum. Dozens of owners recounted similar dilemmas: life-saving surgeries for their pets, sky-high bills, emotional turmoil. Some had found help through specialized charities, others had ended in devastating heartbreak. Lisa's tears fell onto the keyboard as she typed a desperate plea for advice. In the hours that followed, supportive comments poured in. People shared links to advanced fundraising platforms, stories of local news segments that had spurred donations, and testimonies of skilled surgeons offering discounts for hardship cases. Lisa latched onto these glimmers of hope, compiling them into a list she planned to show her parents. She refused to believe they were out of options yet. That night, a storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the windows and thunder rolling across the sky. Chance, spared from the frightening boom by his deafness, still sensed the flicker of light. He huddled against Lisa's side, wide-eyed but silent. Each flare of lightning revealed the damp streaks of tears on her cheeks. She whispered wordless reassurances, pressing her palm to his back so he could feel the warmth of her presence. Downstairs, she heard her parents' hushed voices. They were talking finances again, the gloom in their tone unmistakable. With each rumble of thunder, Lisa felt her resolve tighten, determined to shield Chance from every storm, literal or metaphorical. But she was only 16, and no matter how fiercely she loved him, the harsh realities of adult responsibilities towered around her like cliff walls. As midnight approached, she posted one more update on the crowdfunding site, explaining the new medical concern and how urgent the MRI was. Then she lay next to Chance on her bed, one hand resting on his slowly rising chest. "We'll figure this out," she whispered, even as doubt churned in her stomach. When she finally drifted off, her dreams were filled with spinning MRI machines, the glare of an operating table, and the echo of heartbreak always lurking at the edges. Morning arrived, carrying the smell of wet pavement and the sound of retreating thunder. Lisa woke to find Chance gazing at her with calm, unwavering trust. His breath had a soft rasp, a quiet reminder of how precarious his health remained. She hugged him gently. In that intimate moment of girl and dog, heartbreak seemed a distant threat, until footsteps in the hallway reminded her they were on borrowed time. The MRI was just days away, and with it would come the revelation of whether they'd need a gamble with high-stakes surgery. By the end of the week, everything could change or end in the blink of an eye. The morning of Chance's MRI exam dawned grey and still, as if the world itself held its breath. Lisa, her parents, and the nervous puppy loaded into the family's old sedan, heading to a specialty veterinary hospital 2 towns over, one of the few places equipped to handle advanced diagnostic imaging in animals. As they drove, Lisa clutched Chance in her lap, silently rehearsing all the reasons they had to hope. He'd come this far, he'd fought off pneumonia, and he'd learned to communicate in a silent world. Surely, she told herself, they'd find a way to save him. Once inside the hospital's stark white halls, a technician greeted them with a solemn smile. She placed a small ID band around Chance's foreleg and gestured for Lisa to set him on a rolling cart padded with blankets. Lisa's chest tightened. Letting him out of her arms felt like surrender. She knelt to stroke his ears, signing "good boy" with trembling fingers. Although he couldn't hear her voice crack as she whispered goodbye, he sensed her tension, pressing his muzzle to her palm. The technician disappeared down a corridor, leaving Lisa and her parents in an empty waiting room. The walls were lined with photos of smiling dogs and cats, beacons of hope or cruel reminders, depending on how things unfolded. Time dragged mercilessly. Lisa paced the length of the room, eyes flicking to the clock, then to her parents. Margaret wore an expression of forced calm, while Dennis tapped his foot incessantly, arms crossed over his chest. Finally, Dr. Ramirez emerged, wearing a serious expression that made Lisa's stomach clench. "Chance is under sedation for the MRI," she said quietly. "We'll get preliminary images soon. I'll talk you through them as soon as we know what we're dealing with." She paused, reading their anxious faces. "He's in capable hands, I promise." Lisa swallowed, managing a shaky nod. The hour that followed felt like an eternity. She scrolled through her phone, rereading the outpouring of supportive messages from strangers on the Special Needs Forum and from classmates who'd recently rallied to help. Donations had crept upward, but not enough to cover an extensive operation. She wondered if everyone's kindness would be in vain. When Dr. Ramirez finally returned, holding a small stack of printouts, Lisa braced herself. Her parents stood, shoulders rigid. "He does have a vascular ring anomaly," the vet began gently, spreading out the scans on a small table. "You can see here, this constrictive band is wrapping around his esophagus. It's why all your careful feeding has helped, but the underlying issue remains." She traced a line across the image, pointing to an abnormal loop of blood vessel. "Surgery is the only way to release the pressure, or it'll likely worsen." Margaret's eyes brimmed with tears, and Dennis let out a harsh breath. "And the cost?" Dr. Ramirez recited a figure that made Lisa's vision blur. It was higher than anything they had imagined, even in their worst scenarios. "I know it's daunting," Dr. Ramirez continued, voice gentle, "but there's a specialist, a surgeon who's had success with these procedures. If Chance is otherwise healthy enough, we'd schedule it as soon as possible. Every week we wait raises the risk of further complications." Silence engulfed them. Dennis pinched the bridge of his nose, voice shaking with emotion. "That's more than we can handle. We'd have to dip into our retirement or—" He didn't finish. The weight of it pressed on everyone's chest like lead. Lisa's throat felt raw. She glanced at her mom, who was already dabbing tears from her cheeks. "Dr. Ramirez," Lisa managed, "how likely is it he'll survive the surgery?" "With a skilled team and proper aftercare, we often see good outcomes in cases like Chance's," the vet answered, "but there's always risk, especially with the pneumonia history. I'd estimate a 60 to 70% chance of long-term success if we manage everything closely." She paused, sympathy etched across her features. "It's your decision. If you decide to proceed, we'll need to schedule quickly." The family convened in a private consult room, tension crackling in the air. Lisa could barely sit, her arms folded across her stomach to quell the nausea swirling inside her. Dennis paced the small space, while Margaret gazed at a spot on the floor, silent tears dripping onto the tiles. "I don't see a way," Dennis muttered, voice hoarse. "We can't second mortgage the house. We just can't." Margaret's shoulders shook. "I'm so sorry, Lisa. We love him, we do. But this is beyond what we can manage without risking our home, everything." Lisa felt as though her heart were being torn from her chest. "So, you'd rather give up? Let him die?" Her voice cracked into a sob. "He trusts us. He fought so hard." Her father turned sharply, eyes shining. "You think I want this? It's killing me too." Margaret inhaled unsteadily. "What if we relinquish him to a rescue that can fund the surgery? It's possible there are organizations specialized in such cases. They might find a sponsor." "No," Lisa whispered. "They'll take him away for good. He might never see us again. After everything we've done." She broke off, tears flowing. A quiet knock on the door startled them. Pauline stood there, face set with determination. "I got worried and drove down," she explained, stepping inside. "He's not just your dog, Lisa. He's touched a lot of people's hearts." She held out a phone, showing a crowdfunding page Lisa hadn't seen before, an entirely new campaign started by supporters at the training center. Donations poured in, including large sums from businesses Lisa didn't recognize. The total was climbing faster than anything she'd ever witnessed. "This might not cover everything," Pauline added softly, "but it's a head start. Your story spread further than you realize. People want to help." Lisa's parents stared at the phone in awe. Margaret's lips trembled into a hopeful smile. Dennis rubbed his forehead, voice thick with emotion. "Even then, we're still short, but maybe—" He trailed off, eyes meeting Pauline's. "Could we possibly arrange a payment plan with the surgeon?" Pauline nodded, stepping forward. "We can try, and I can keep reaching out. There's a deaf dog rescue upstate that might pitch in. Let's not throw in the towel yet." Lisa sagged with relief, but the reality remained. They still needed to make a decision. "Dr. Ramirez said we have to act soon," she reminded them. "Chance can't keep living like this. It's not fair to him." It was Margaret who finally spoke up, voice trembling but resolute. "We'll do it. We'll find a way." She squeezed Dennis's arm, and after a heartbeat's hesitation, he nodded. "We'll fight for him." Tears flooded Lisa's eyes, tears of gratitude and raw, overwhelming relief. They stepped back into the main lobby, where Dr. Ramirez waited expectantly. Lisa's voice quivered as she said, "We'll proceed with the surgery." The veterinarian offered a gentle smile, nodding as though she'd anticipated this choice. "I'll contact the specialist right away." At that moment, a tech wheeled Chance out on a small gurney, still groggy from sedation but blinking curiously. Lisa darted over, heart thudding. As she stroked his fur, signing good boy, she realized they were at a precipice between despair and possibility. The battle was far from won. There'd be months of grueling recovery and financial strain, but at least they'd chosen hope over surrender. Chance's tail gave a weak thump, and he lifted his muzzle, catching Lisa's scent. A tear slipped down her cheek as she pressed her forehead against his. He couldn't hear the vow she whispered, but she felt sure he understood the vow in her trembling hands, her steady heartbeat. "We won't give up on you. Whatever heartbreak lies ahead, we'll face it together." In that shared moment, the world outside the veterinary hospital seemed to hush. For a single heartbeat in time, the fear, the debt, the rumors, and the uncertain odds all receded. There was only Lisa, her family, and the deaf puppy who had defied expectation after expectation. The future was unwritten, its pages blank and foreboding. But for now, one truth stood bright and unyielding. Love had once again prevailed, guiding them toward a chance to save him from the silent darkness. 4 weeks had passed since Lisa and her family made the momentous decision to move forward with Chance's high-risk surgery. In that time, their lives revolved around phone calls with specialists, fundraising efforts that seemed to grow more incredible by the day, and the delicate balance of keeping Chance comfortable despite the looming operation. Every dawn brought a swirl of uncertainty. Every dusk offered a silent prayer that tomorrow might bring better news. The outpouring of support astonished everyone. Donations trickled, mice then poured in from strangers touched by Chance's story. Local businesses held bake sales, kids in the neighborhood sold lemonade, and the special needs pet community spread the word far and wide. Pauline tirelessly organized a small benefit fair at the dog training center, complete with agility demos and a silent auction. Though Lisa still couldn't fathom the final bill, Each new deposit in their crowdfunding account infused her with renewed determination. Even neighbors who had once eyed Chance with suspicion now dropped by with envelopes or warm wishes, indicating that hearts and minds were slowly changing. Meanwhile, Chance himself seemed unaware of the whirlwind surrounding him. For him, life remained a series of gentle feedings in his upright chair, short training sessions with Lisa's patient hand signals, and quiet hours resting on his favorite blanket. Now that everyone knew the precise reason for his swallowing difficulties, it was easier to manage mealtimes, albeit with the unspoken knowledge that this was only a stopgap until the surgery. Some days, he coughed more often, and Lisa's stomach would twist with fear. Other days, he bumbled around the house like any playful puppy, tail wagging and eyes sparkling at the sight of new squeak toys. At last, the day of the operation arrived. Margaret and Dennis took time off work, and Lisa skipped school. The family's car ride to the surgical center carried a heavy mixture of dread and hope. Chance again was oblivious to their spoken worries, but he trembled at the unfamiliar environment. Lisa stroked his ears, murmuring soothing words he couldn't hear but might still feel through her soft breath and calming touch. They were met by Dr. Ramirez and a visiting specialist, Dr. Levinson, renowned for handling rare vascular anomalies in dogs. Dr. Levinson showed them a diagram of the abnormal blood vessel loop strangling Chance's esophagus. "We'll open the chest cavity and carefully remove or sever this extra vessel," she explained. "If all goes well, he should have a much easier time swallowing." Lisa bit her lip. "And the risks." The specialist met her eyes with gentle candor. "Open chest surgery is always serious. There's a risk of infection, bleeding, or complications from anesthesia, especially given his past pneumonia, but we've prepared for every contingency. Our goal is to give him the future he deserves." Lisa and her parents took turns hugging Chance, tears shining in their eyes. Dennis rested his forehead against the pup's, whispering a silent plea. Margaret gently stroked his back, while Lisa tapped the floor with her fingertips, her usual way of saying goodbye or "I'll be back soon." Then a technician wheeled him away, and the family was left in a stark waiting room once more, hearts pounding. The surgery lasted hours, each minute an agonizing stretch of unknowns. Lisa felt unable to breathe properly, pacing in tight circles, her mind conjuring worst-case scenarios. Margaret alternated between weeping quietly and offering shaky reassurances. Dennis sat stiffly, lost in a silent war with his own doubts. Finally, Dr. Levinson emerged, her scrubs spotted with signs of the procedure. "It went well," she said in a measured tone that nonetheless carried relief. "We were able to remove the constricting vessel without significant bleeding. He's in recovery now. The next 48 hours are crucial: pneumonia risk, pain management, and monitoring his incision. But the initial signs are promising." A collective exhale swept through the family. Lisa nearly collapsed into her mother's arms, tears soaking Margaret's blouse. Dennis covered his face, shoulders quaking with silent gratitude. Relief, tempered by lingering anxiety, flooded the room. Dr. Levinson explained that Chance would remain under close observation at the clinic for several days, then potentially move to a specialized rehab facility if his lungs and incision healed properly. The first evening post-surgery was the hardest. Chance lay unconscious, tubes and monitors snaking over his small body. Lisa was allowed a brief visit. She ran her fingers along the shaved patch of fur on his chest, swallowing hard at the sight of the surgical scar. Despite the sedation, his nose twitched at her scent, a tiny sign that his spirit still fought within that fragile form. Day by day, the updates grew more positive. Chance regained consciousness, recognized Lisa's touch, and showed signs of improved swallowing reflexes. The staff managed his pain meticulously, adjusting medications while ensuring he didn't develop fluid in his lungs. Lisa and her parents hovered, taking shifts to be near him, quietly reading or softly humming songs. Even though Chance couldn't hear the lullabies Lisa tried to sing, the gentle vibrations of her presence soothed him. By the end of the second week, Dr. Levinson declared him stable enough to continue healing at home, provided they stayed vigilant about infection and feeding techniques. The news sent a fresh wave of relief coursing through everyone. Lisa's parents reorganized the living room into a makeshift recovery zone, complete with fluffy blankets, the feeding chair, and any supplies he might need. Glenn, the carpenter, swung by to add a small extension to the chair, ensuring minimal pressure on Chance's healing incision. When the day came to finally bring Chance back home, neighbors gathered outside, some purely curious, others offering genuine support. Teresa, the once skeptical neighbor, even brought a colorful "Welcome Home" banner. As Lisa carried Chance toward the front door, a hush fell over the small crowd. The pup blinked at all the unfamiliar faces, tail wagging uncertainly. Lisa offered a quick hand signal, her personal sign for "it's okay," and watched relief settle into his posture. Inside, with the door shut, the family collapsed into a circle on the living room floor, tears of joy mingling with exhaustion. Chance curled among them, resting his head on Lisa's leg. He still had a long road ahead, several follow-up appointments, rehab exercises, and a cautious transition to normal feeding. Yet the hardest part was over. They had defied the odds. A deaf puppy with a crippling esophageal condition, now free from the choking loop that had threatened to end his life. Later that evening, Lisa posted a heartfelt update to the crowdfunding page, thanking everyone who contributed, from strangers who donated a few dollars to local businesses that rallied behind Chance's cause. Pictures of him curled up on soft blankets, his new surgical scar visible but healing, brought a flood of encouraging replies. Many marveled at how love, determination, and community support had paved the way for a second chance. One reply stood out. An anonymous user wrote, "Thank you for showing us that a life worth saving doesn't have to be perfect. May we all learn from Chance's resilience." Tears welled in Lisa's eyes as she read it. Chance might never hear the world's loud applause, but his story had resonated in silent chords that united hearts. That night, after her parents retired to bed, Lisa sat cross-legged beside Chance, who dozed on his side. His breathing, though still a bit raspy, was steady. She placed her hand gently on his chest, feeling the rise and fall of his lungs freed from the cruel loop that once threatened him. In that quiet moment, Lisa knew the heartbreak they'd endured had been worth it. Their trust in each other had carried them through the darkest nights, forging a bond unbreakable by circumstance or rumor. She pressed her forehead to his, signing "I love you" against his side, even though words were just a whisper in the void of his silence. Chance stirred, eyes half opening, meeting her gaze. In that look, Lisa felt the echo of every promise she'd ever made to him. Together, they had faced heartbreak and emerged, fragile yet triumphant, on the other side. Thank you for witnessing this emotional journey of determination and hope. If Chance's story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel and like this video so we can continue sharing stories of resilience, courage, and the power of compassion. Leave a comment to let us know your thoughts. How would you handle a challenge like Lisa's? And don't forget to watch our next video for more inspiring tales of love, survival, and the unbreakable bonds between people and their animals. Every click, share, and subscription helps us shine a light on stories that truly deserve to be told.